Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Hello and welcome everybody to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So glad that you've joined me here today, and I'm super excited about my guest. She's amazing, and she talks a lot about the things that we talk about here because we're so aligned in what we believe and how, you know, the message to the world about overcoming ourselves and emotional eating and body image issues and so many things that are really important here on the Heal Your Hunger Show. If you are tuning in for the first time, I want to welcome you to the show. We are doing a lot of cool things here. If you haven't picked up a copy of my book, I certainly would invite you to do that. It's called Heal Your Hunger, 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. And I also have a companion course to that if you want to dig in and get started with me. It's called 7 Simple Steps to End Emotional Eating Now. So it's really cool, and there's lots of people jumping in and getting good results already. We're just starting in it, but you can jump in anytime and get started with us. So please do that. You can learn more at healyourhunger.com. But now for my amazing guest. She is the best-selling author of Women, Food, and Desire, and she's the co-creator and co-star of the Oscar-nominated documentary Supersize Me, and highly sought-after wellness expert for thousands. Jamieson has made it her mission to empower women to create epic lives by honoring their cravings and kicking body shame to the curb. Yeah. Alex is the creator of Her Rules Radio, which is the #1 rated podcast on iTunes, where listeners from around the world are educated and captivated by thought-provoking interviews on wellness, cravings, sexuality, and more. She has been all over the place and praised and adored by Oprah, The Today Show, Dr. Oz, Goop, Martha Stewart Living, New York Times, and on and on and on. So without any further ado, welcome, Alex. So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Tricia. I love talking with you.
I know. Likewise. It's just great to have you here. And we are so aligned, and it's just beautiful. And tell everybody, for those very few people who don't know you, tell us about your story and how, you know, the whole Supersize Me thing and how that came about, and then how you've evolved from there, because you've come a long ways since then.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It really starts in my childhood. So I was raised on an old organic farm outside of Portland, Oregon by a couple of hippies. And we didn't have any sugar in the house growing up. My mom had an organic gardening radio show for 10 years when I was a kid. And we worked out in the yard every weekend. We didn't have any junk food except like birthdays and Christmas. But I was a serious sugar fiend, and I would use all of my allowance immediately to buy candy bars. And I actually started going to Sunday school because I heard the kids at Sunday school got Kool-Aid and cookies every weekend. So I took myself to church by myself without my family, basically so I could go get treats on the weekends. That's how dedicated I was to getting sugar.
I totally get it.
I had 12 cavities by the time I was 12 years old. And I got away with a lot of really bad behavior because I was so active. But looking back, I can see the trajectory towards me getting very, very sick when I was 25. And I think moving to New York City, and I had a knee surgery where I had to take a lot of antibiotics. It just knocked out what was left of my immune system and my gut microbiome. And I started to feel horrible. Migraine headaches every day, depressed, exhausted, put on 30 pounds after college. And I was like, wait, I'm 25. I'm not supposed to feel this bad. So I finally went to a doctor because I was just taking handfuls of Advil every day. And I was eating more and more M&Ms and drinking more and more super big gulps of Dr. Pepper and Coca-Cola to get through the day. And when I went to the first doctor, he handed me 2 prescriptions for painkillers and Prozac. And luckily, I had the immediate reaction of, no way, I'm not taking that stuff. But I knew I had to do something because I was just miserable. And I went to another doctor who asked me what I was eating. Now, this was what we would now call a functional medicine doctor. Then it was just like this weird alternative guy with a Buddha in his office. And when he asked me what I was eating, it became very clear. He's like, no wonder you're sick. Okay. So he put me on a complete detox cleanse, real food, avoid all these things. And it was very challenging at first, but I felt so bad physically. I had really hit bottom and I was willing to do anything. And I started to feel better really soon. Within a couple of weeks, it turned around. The headache stopped. My brain fog lifted. Within a couple of months, the weight just started to, fall away as I was just eating better food. And I got really into cooking. I had never really cooked before. And I started a culinary program here in New York City at the Natural Gourmet Institute. And they teach all about healthy cuisine, how to cook for people who are sick, gluten-free, all that stuff. And at the same time, it's a very yin-yang kind of life here in New York. So healthy cooking school during the day, serving drinks in a smoky bar at night to pay your rent.
Right.
So while I'm making rent in the smoky bar, I see this cute guy and I pick him up and we start dating. And he's this budding filmmaker and I'm this food rebel revolutionary trying to make everybody go vegan like I did. And we came up with the idea for Supersize Me. His name was Morgan Spurlock. And we came up with this crazy idea for him to eat nothing but McDonald's for a month and see what would happen and turn a camera on and film the whole thing. And it became this amazing film where he got super sick really fast. And the movie became a global sensation. And we sold the movie to over 25 countries. We traveled the world for a year premiering the film. And, I became known as a professional vegan. I wrote 3 vegan cookbooks after that. And for 10 years, we had this, this life together. And things got a little more complicated after that. Should I go into part 2 of the story or do you want to wait for that?
Why not? You go for it.
Okay. Well, as you know, Tricia, your body changes as you age. Darn it.
Yep.
And now I was 35 and Morgan and I had just had a kid, a little boy, and our relationship wasn't going too great. Things were really challenging. And the stress of that, coupled with my changing body, coupled with being a mom and taking care of a little boy, I started to have some real health problems. My menstrual cycle was a disaster. It was coming every 2 weeks.
Wow.
I was exhausted again. I was getting depressed again. I was having crazy insomnia for months and months on end, insomnia. And I started to crave meat. This was not good. This was not on brand. This was not what I had written 3 books about. And I did everything within the vegan framework to try to heal. I did all the superfoods, all the vitamins and minerals, all the supplements, all the things you're supposed to do, and nothing was working. And I finally realized, if I'm salivating over other people's food. I see people eating burgers or salmon, and I yearn for their food, but I wasn't allowing myself the same compassion that I was teaching all my clients. Like, hey, listen to your body. What do you need? It doesn't matter what the book says. What do you need? What feels good to your body? I wasn't allowing that for myself. And so it's funny that at the age of, 35, being a vegan expert, I was now having this disordered eating. I won't call it an eating disorder, but it was a very weird, complicated. Like I was hiding food. I finally started listening to my body, but I would go to the store and put salmon under the kale in my basket so nobody could see it. And I'd eat by myself. I didn't want to eat in public with anyone. So I was like, wow, wait a minute. Like this is not a relationship with food that I want. What do I want? And luckily I had a few friends who were not vegan who I felt safe talking about this whole thing with, because I was really suffering in silence. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it does sound like an eating disorder, except it's with salmon instead of chips and fries and hot fudge sundaes. So, I mean, it's kind of comical when you look back at it, I'm sure,
Yeah, it's like orthorexia, right? An extreme way of eating that's right.
Yep.
Whether or not that set of rules is actually working for you and your body.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So I was very lucky to have a few friends who were like, sweetheart, just eat a burger. Like we don't care what you eat. Really, please. You're falling apart here, babe. So this was, this struggle went on for quite a few years. And I finally kind of came out of the vegan closet on my website and made a proclamation. I'm not vegan anymore. And this is why. And I'm still dedicated to helping people with food. And it went insanely viral.
Yeah.
And it went viral before I knew what things going viral was.
Right.
So thousands of comments on this blog, thousands of shares, hundreds of emails to me, death threats.
Oh my God.
People who I was friends with before who were, other professional vegans doing entire podcasts about what a terrible person I was. And
oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It was so crazy. But looking back, it's now like, it's so like, I'm so over it. Like
of course. Well, so you found your way, but but I remember I met you right before you did that. And I remember the struggle.
Gosh.
Yeah, I remember the struggle you were having and how you were sharing with a safe community on the fact that these are the changes you're experiencing, and you can no longer live a lie, and that you absolutely must come out. And it was I remember the terror you were experiencing just considering this. But it was a non-negotiable, like you had to do it. And you did. And obviously you've come through to the other side, and you've got this amazing podcast and, and service to people. But it's interesting because I just recorded a video for my course, my program. And it's the one where I'm telling people more about food. My course is very emotional and spiritually based, but, we do have to address the physical. And so I get into that. But one of the first videos in that section is called Your Divine Physician, because we absolutely cannot, be dictated by other people's dogma, and we absolutely, at the end of the day, have to listen to our bodies, and we are the last word on what goes in our mouths and what goes in our bodies, and it's absolutely perfect. Like the cravings we get and the messages we get and that still small voice that speaks to us is talking the truth, and all we have to do is listen. So what an amazing experience you had, because you were doing it under the microscope, of so many.
Well, that's what I now realize makes it so hard for women to find their way with food and their body, because we are under this microscope and we do feel judged, especially in this world of social media. We open ourselves up to attack and to trolling, and that feels bad.
Yeah,
it does. It feels really bad. It takes a lot of practice having a thick skin to not let those things get to you. I mean, a lot of practice. So of course it feels scary to take the risk of being honest. Like, hey, I went paleo and paleo didn't work for me. Or, hey, I tried this keto thing and I feel worse than ever. Or, hey, I tried vegan and I put on 20 pounds. that we open ourselves up to people saying, oh, well, you didn't do it right. Oh, well, you're just not dedicated enough.
Right.
Oh, well, blah, 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 blah. Like,
right.
And that is, for us humans, getting kicked out of a tribe, it feels like death. Yep. It's very scary on a very primal level.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bottom line is we always have to listen to our bodies because our bodies know.
They do. They do. She's my GPS.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. But it takes practice learning to listen to her.
Oh my God, so much trial and error, and I find that it's, I have to really watch the regrets. I look back, I could do a whole, history of the decisions or the choices I didn't make that I knew I should make, that higher self was speaking to me and that my GPS was talking to me, telling me exactly which way to turn. And the fear is such a little fucker, like it tells us, no, that's going to be too much trouble, too much negativity, too much, can't possibly do that, keep it safe, and
right.
Boy, the regret from that is pretty enormous. So I've had to really manage those regretful feelings and, excuse me, and really just realize that was my path. And we've had a conversation about this as well. It's like, it's part of our unfolding. And it's, that's how we learn. We course correct. We don't make a decision we know we should have made. Then we beat on ourselves for a little while. And then we're like, okay, now I know, keeping quiet and not stepping out doesn't work for me because it just feels bad. And I get really mad at myself. And then I miss out on a whole lot of good things that might have happened had I had that faith. And then next time we realize, oh, I don't want to do that again. And we course correct and then it gets better. But it is an evolving situation.
Yeah, it for sure is. I try to think of it as, I try to put a spiritual bent on things as well, because I feel like that's a piece that's missing from so much of the diet world.
Yeah.
Is that, what's really going on here? What do you really want? How do you really want to feel? So I try to talk about it in terms of like wayfinding.
Yes.
You're finding your way, and that requires going down a path and finding, oh, no, that's not the path. Oh, got to backtrack. Okay, get back, try another one, try to just keep inching forward. And that's all it is for everyone.
Yeah, and it is. It's for men too. They may have an easier time, saying what it is they want or claiming it, but they're still finding their way too. They're still self-centered and have their, fears about, who they're going to stand up to or what they're going to stand up and speak out about as well. So it's just, it's a pretty much a human thing, I suppose. Yeah. Well, that's great. So tell me about Her Rules Radio and how you've come into that and obviously what that's about.
So I started a podcast a couple of years ago, and I love it. I love having a microphone in my hand in my closet here in New York City. It really reminds me of, growing up with my mom, going down to her radio show booth every Saturday morning and her talking about organic gardening. And it's an incredible way to talk about what's going on in terms of women's health and food and politics and how the environment that we live in affects us, affects our emotions. New things about nutrition and medical, the sciences, which is still really evolving.
Yes.
The whole microbiome world. It's like the Wild West of nutrition right now.
Right.
And it's the frontier. How amazing is that?
Yeah.
But also just tying together, talking about how we minimize ourselves and our emotions and our wants and our fears, especially for women. It's such, we're taught, and I was just talking to a client about this today. She said, yeah, I was taught to be quiet. I was taught to blend in. I was actually taught by my parents to get to events early so that you can sit in the back row and not be noticed.
Goodness. Oh no, sit in front.
Yeah. So for her in her mid-50s, overcoming a lifetime of being told not to take risks, Don't ask a question unless you know the answer. And if you think the answer is no, don't even ask it.
Yeah.
That's actually what she was taught.
That's
and
so crazy.
How are we supposed to have an inner knowing if we've been taught to squash our knowing for our entire lives?
So
of course we rely on diet books. Of course we look to the diet industrial complex and fitness gurus when what they're recommending might not actually be appropriate for us. But how would we know?
Right. Yeah, we're so used to looking outside of us. It's so funny because growing up, I had a lot of good, positive encouragement from my parents. I was the youngest, which I think gave me a lot more latitude, and I was really forced to be reckoned with because I had a lot of energy and ideas, and I was excited. But it's so funny because even though I was encouraged to do, pretty much whatever I wanted to do, my parents had a lot of fear also, and they were very much into not making waves and not pissing people off and not breaking any rules. So it was just really simultaneously those messages did not match. Like I wanted to break out, and at the same time I had to make sure nobody was angry, or I didn't ruffle any feathers. And it's hard to do, it's hard to toe both lines.
It really is. And as I'm finally reaching the semblance of middle age here, I'm starting to realize like paradox is everywhere in our lives. More than one thing can be true at a time. I can be introverted and want to speak my truth and my mission out to the world in a big way.
Yeah.
I can be a skinny white blonde lady and still have a totally distorted view of my power and my beauty as perceived by others in the world, right? Like both things can be true.
Right.
And that's a very complicated thing to wrap your head around. Like, wow, paradox is everywhere.
It's so true.
And no matter what you do, this is something that I talk about a lot lately. No matter what you do, no matter how conscious and aware and kind and generous you try to be in the world, you're still going to tick people off.
Right.
Like there's nothing you can do to make everyone happy and everyone like you.
Yep.
And it's kind of a relief. So maybe we should just stop trying.
I just love that. There's no doubt about it.
It doesn't mean you're just going to automatically become a total jerk. You're just not going to be that way. But what if you could just be real with yourself and more compassionate and stop trying to be so dang perfect, because that's a fallacy.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I was interviewed the other day on somebody else's podcast, and I brought up spirituality, and she wanted to make sure that it was clear that we were talking about spirituality and not religion, because there's a difference. And she's like, what would you say to people who really bristle at the whole idea of God? And I couldn't help myself. What popped in my head was, get over it. That's what I said. I said, well, sorry, but you got to get over it. Like it's, we're past that now. It's clear, obviously spirituality is, and it's not obvious because I was at the place where I bristled with religion also,
Me too.
At the time, right? So I know we're all evolving, but in the moment, that's what Spirit guided me to say, and I was just, get over it. If you want to get over your problems, you're going to have to surrender to this notion that there's something bigger than you, and it was just kind of funny for me because I do my own fair share of pussyfooting. So I was like, well, that's what I was guided to say. So that's what came out.
Well, I would call you, you're very diplomatic and you're very conscious in your speech. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm with you though. Like sometimes we just have to say, fuck it. Like, can we just stop already?
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I find that the older I get, this is one cool thing about getting older, is I feel like I don't have time. Like I don't have time to have an abstract conversation. Like, let's not talk in, metaphors here. Let's just get right down and talk turkey, because I don't have time. Like, I don't have time to figure out what you're saying or to, have, innuendo. I just need to get like the straight talk straight right now. We can take that information and go with it. It's just sort of interesting. It does become a time factor. Like I I don't know. Or maybe it's the introvert in me. Like, I just don't want to be talking for too long. I just want to get to the point and move on.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I am consciously collecting more elders into my life. I have a friend who's 72 and she is amazing. She's a total spitfire. She was actually featured in that documentary, Advanced Style, about the little old ladies who dress amazingly.
Yeah.
And she's just like, look, I don't have time to mess with people who suck me dry or talk that doesn't matter. So I'm like, ooh, can I be you when I grow up? Can I be you now?
Yeah, so true. And it is. It's, I think with time, you develop that attitude. You're like, I have to make good with the time that I have. So no nonsense here.
And, I also want to acknowledge that you and I have, in our own ways, worked on ourselves a lot over the years.
Yep.
We've been in this continual evolution of ourselves, whether it's mindset or spirituality or health or career or whatever, all the different ways that you can work on yourself. And it's never ending. You're always discovering things that you're like, wow, oh my gosh, I never saw that before. Or, oh, that again. I totally thought I was done with that.
Yep.
But here's a new flavor of that old challenge.
Yep.
So I just want to say that as a way to acknowledge the people who feel like they've been doing this for 5 years or 10 years and they feel like they're still dealing. I'm like, you know what, sweetheart, once your eyes are open and you're on this path, it really just becomes part of who you are. That doesn't mean that you have to beat the crap out of you. In fact, please don't. Please don't beat the crap out of yourself. It doesn't help. Having just come out of a little cycle of beating the crap out of myself.
Yeah. No bueno.
No bueno. And not nearly as much fun. No. So, you're not alone.
Yeah, no, it's really true. And I think what happens is when we start kind of the self-reflection journey, and self-improvement journey, what we do, and the spiritual journey as well, what we do is we come to establish some basic notions, and one of which is that this whole life is a journey, and we're here for spiritual growth, and emotional growth. And so everything is a lesson that we can learn from, and positioning it in that way is so beautiful because then nothing is wasted, and so then we can start to take each hurdle or each, valley that we go through as an opportunity to learn and to grow. And I love seeing it in that spiritual context. And all that means is every time we do run into another one, we're never at the mountaintop all the time, And so it's like we can really, that's useful information going forward, and if we're ever in a position where we can teach or share with other people like you and I are, all it is fodder for more, more ways to help other people on their journey. And that just makes it even more delicious.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. And there's so many different kinds of healing and emotional challenges that show up in and on your body. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had this? I've seen this with clients so many times, and even in myself, when there's something old and stuck that's either a family challenge or a psychological personality issue you're trying to change, or just some deep energetic healing in you, and you have a breakthrough or you break up with someone, or something lightens for you, something heals, and your body shifts. Pain goes away, or a long-standing health issue starts to miraculously clear up.
Yep.
That stuff is real.
Or those last 5 pounds, just all of a sudden are easy, they go away without my forcing them.
Yeah. I had a client who's, when I first started working with her, she and her husband were starting to separate. And when they finally divorced, as we were still working together, she's like, I just lost 190 pounds divorcing my husband. And since I signed the divorce paper, I've lost 5.
Yeah. No, it's so true. There is no mystery there. Boy, there is no mystery. We're eating, we're eating over so many emotional things, and they have to be healed or else we'll keep eating.
Yeah, they do. But feels scary. That feels riskier than just, I'm just going to eat 800 calories a day. Right? Looking at how I relate to my mother and my money mindset is way more challenging than I'm just going to take this pill that makes me feel like I'm on 8 cups of coffee.
Yeah. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to try some sort of quick fix for the next 20 years. That's what they don't add to the end of the sentence. It's going to be a 20-year journey of things that don't work.
Yeah. I'm really trying to help people have a lot more fun in whatever process they're in. So I try to talk about play and pleasure a lot. That we think that we're not allowed pleasure unless we lose the weight, or we're not deserving of play, or we don't even know what's fun for us anymore.
Yeah.
Fun is something that children do. But fun and pleasure, like actual physical pleasure, and that can be someone rubbing your back. It can be a massage. It can be masturbation. It can be a hula hoop, a bike ride. I mean, it can be going dancing with a girlfriend. It can be so many things. Yep. Play and pleasure are the best way to have the experience of enjoying living in your body now as you are. And when you play or feel pleasure, it's like this incredible cascade of hormones. Those pleasure hormones turn on, the oxytocin, the dopamine, the endorphins that actually lead to the metabolic state that we need to be in to lose the weight.
Right. Yeah, it's so amazing how that works.
So it's this gorgeous virtual cycle. Or not virtuous cycle.
Yeah. Well, it is like a new language to have fun, and I think we all struggle with that, thinking we have to work, or, study. And I even find, I've always my whole life have been like, where's the fun? Like, I'm going with the fun. And if it's not fun, I don't do it. Like, I've always been wired that way. But still, even though that's true, there is a part of me that sometimes, like, my favorite thing to do lately is to get in bed with my husband. Like we're off doing our own things, but late at night we get in bed and we watch a program. We find a program we like, and now you can watch several, but we only watch one at a time usually. But still, we get hooked on some show and we watch it together and we cuddle, and it is my favorite thing in the whole world to do. And sometimes I'm like, I literally will say to myself in my head, is that okay? Like, sometimes I'm like, I love these things to do, like going out and being social. I'm like, I'd really rather get in bed and watch TV. But, I'm like, is that okay? And I'm asking, who am I asking? Like, is that okay? And then I have to answer myself and say, yeah, I think it's okay,
Hey, you know what? That's what Her Rules Radio is all about. It's where women go to make their own rules.
Oh my God, it's so crazy.
My happy place is on my couch between my 10-year-old kid and my husband watching Netflix. Yeah. Hands down.
Something so awesome about it. Well, that's great. Well, it's so good to have you here. Thank you so much. This has certainly been pleasurable for me. And I so appreciate you, Alex. And you have a free gift for the people tuning in today. You want to tell us about that?
Well, I have a really fun ebook that I recently created that's totally free to download. It's kind of a book/workbook. It's called How to Write Your Fuck It List.
Oh.
It's how to stop doing shit you hate so you can have a life you love. I am a positive psychology nerd. I've gone back and gotten a certification in positive psychology coaching. And, that's all about like building on your strengths and learning a growth mindset. with real science-backed methods. Well, sometimes it's hard to focus on what we want, which is the positive psychology method. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have to just talk about what we're really tired of, like what's old and crappy. What am I so tired of doing? Then once you get clear on what you're over and you're done with, then you can flip it and say, okay, what do I want?
Yeah.
So that's what this book is all about.
That's beautiful. I love it. And they can get that on your website.
They can go to alexandrajamieson.com, and it's under must-haves.
Okay.
So just click must-haves. It's free. You can download it there.
Beautiful. And I'll put a link to your website on the in the show notes as well. It's so funny that you say that because I usually never swear on this show. But because I'm talking to you, of course, I ended up swearing. We've said it a few times. I'm like, oh, this is the show.
I bring it out of people. I'm sorry. I just can't. That's the only word that works sometimes.
It's the best. I always say that the F word's like the number one best healing word there is.
It's so radical to say it out loud for some of us.
But it's so cathartic, It's just such a cathartic word, so emotionally.
Thanks for letting me. I know this show's going to have the little E for expletive on it.
Okay, so I have one more question for you that I ask all my guests, and that is, what is your deepest hunger?
Oh, man. My deepest hunger is great food shared with my favorite people.
Oh, I love that. That is
truly
beautiful.
My favorite experience in life.
I love it. Thank you. And thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed this show and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.